please find a comfortable posture. As we begin meditation, always by becoming aware of our posture, our physical posture, how we're sitting. If you want to enjoy your meditation, you need to be sitting comfortably. It's like when you're a kid and they say, if you're sitting comfortably, then we'll begin. When they read you a story. So sitting comfortably means sitting so you're not wobbling, moving around. You're not causing yourself unnecessary pain, pressing on your leg too much. Becoming aware of your back. What did the Buddha said? The Buddha he said, sit up straight. So try and keep a fairly straight back without straining. And this is the beginning of meditation, becoming aware of your physical posture in the present moment, right here, right now. We often think of meditation as to do with the mind. But the most obvious thing to be aware of in your life is actually your body. But we miss it, we forget it. We're always caught up in our thinking, our moods. So when you begin meditation, come back to the posture. How are you sitting? And try and sit in a way that you can hold your posture for a period of time. Even if you have some discomfort, some pain, aches and pains, just accept that, as long as it's not too extreme. But you'll find if you have a stable posture from the beginning, then even if you have some aches and pains, you'll be able to hold or sustain the posture longer. And that will allow your mind to calm down. If the body is more still, then the mind becomes more still. So we're practicing meditation following the Buddha. What did the Buddha awaken to or realize through his meditation? We call that the Four Noble Truths. Ariya Satcha Dhamma. So he realized suffering, dukkha, what it is, got to know that, understand that. But also understood the cause of suffering. Technical word is samudaya, and that the cause of suffering is avijja, which means ignorance or not knowing or being unawake. So similar to sleepiness, but not exactly the same. And when we have ignorance or unawareness in the mind constantly is producing what we call craving, tanha, sensual craving, craving to become, craving not to become, which is like aversion. This produces suffering, and here we mean mental suffering in the present moment, comes from our craving, which comes from unawareness. But the Buddha realized the end of suffering, what we call nirodha, or cessation, the ending of stress, suffering, ending of craving. But to do that, he cultivated the path, Arya Magga, Eightfold Noble Path, which is what we're doing right now. So we've taken precepts, took refuge in the Buddha Dhamma Sangha, undertook to keep the precepts, give us some discipline in our speech, our action. And then the other factors of the path, like putting effort forth, right effort, right mindfulness, calming body and mind down, right samadhi, and samadhi, developing right view and right understanding of the way things are. So we can see craving for what it is, the cause of suffering. And the Buddha said craving is to be abandoned or let go of. And to do that you need to be mindful. So this is why we keep talking about mindfulness, coming back to your body, your mind in the present moment with this quality of mindfulness, what we call clear comprehension, sati sampajanya. And this is what the Buddha realized, what you might call Buddhism. Nowadays we say Buddhism. It's really just the knowledge that came from the awakened mind of the Buddha. And because he was very kind, compassionate, he shared it with other people. He actually at first thought, this won't work, nobody will understand it. So he just sat still under the Bodhi tree. And he thought, I'll just enjoy my own awakened state, enlightened, peaceful, happy. But he'd actually, we call the Buddha a bodhisattva before he's a Buddha. He'd actually made a wish, an aspiration to realize the Dhamma, free himself from suffering, not just for himself, but for everyone. He'd had that wish in his heart. So sooner or later that wish came up, and then he was invited by an old friend called Brahma Sahampati, which is why at the beginning of Dhamma talks, his name is mentioned. Brahma Sahampati invited the Buddha to teach the Dhamma for compassion, or out of compassion for all beings. Because everybody wants to be happy. I don't think anyone here doesn't want to be happy, but we don't all know how to be happy, how to find happiness. But the Buddha did. So you might call him happiness expert, wellness expert. These are modern terms, aren't they? He understood all that, how a human being can be happy. But he also understood they have to create the right causes and conditions. They have to do the right things in order to be happy. It's not something you can just want or wish. So out of compassion, the Buddha went to see his 5 friends, what we call the 5 ascetics, Panchavaki. He had to walk a long way to get to them. Again, out of compassion, he took the time to walk across that part of India. Probably took a while, quite a few days. And then on this day that we're remembering, Asalaha Puja, he gave teaching. This was the first teaching that he gave on how to practice for the end of craving, the end of suffering, how to do it. And then the rest of his life kind of elaborated on that, teaching more and more, but always on the same theme, or circling around the same theme. Getting to know suffering, its cause, and then how to end it. So he called the 4 noble truths that he realized are like the elephant's footprint. Everything else fits into it. We don't have elephants in Australia, but if you ever go to Asia, as many of you have, if you meet an elephant and you look at its footprint, or even if you go to Melbourne Zoo and you see the elephant enclosure where they have a lot of mud, and you look at the footprint, it's huge. It's like someone gets a big bucket and they push it down into the ground. So if you put your foot in an elephant's footprint, your foot disappears. So all the teachings of the Buddha, they fall into or come into the footprint of the Four Noble Truths. Somewhere or other, they're either, he's talking about the practice of cultivating the path, or one part of the path. He's talking about the origin of suffering, craving, and how bad it is. If you talk about it as a story, then craving is the bad guy to be got rid of. Sometimes he's talking about dukkha. The reason we practice is because we still have suffering, dukkha, in our lives. But it's all centered around these Four Noble Truths, comes back to them. Just like all the footprints of the animals in the forest fit in the footprint of the elephant. So what we're practicing today is getting to understand the Four Noble Truths better for ourselves. We do that partly through listening. So we listen to Dhamma or read Dhamma, talk about Dhamma, ask questions. Then the Buddha said we have to bring it in, opanayiko, bring it into our heart. And not just remember the words, but actually start seeing or knowing for ourselves. Which is why we encourage everyone to practice some meditation. Because when you're practicing meditation, you're cultivating this quality of mindfulness. You might say awakened awareness, waking up to the truth. But to do that takes practice. So we sit together, we walk together, we sit together, because that helps. If many people are doing it, then you get some group energy. You try harder. But still, the biggest problem is your own mind. The unawareness, or the lack of mindfulness and the lack of understanding in your own mind keeps coming up, our mind keeps returning to that. And we get lost in our thoughts, sleepiness, different moods and reactions. So the Buddha reminded us to be patient with our own mind. Ajahn Chah used to teach that all the time. Be patient. Be willing to endure a little bit of mental suffering, even physical suffering, because that's part of life. And to understand it, you have to see it, you have to know it. But remember, you can go beyond it. By understanding it, seeing it, you can then go beyond it by letting go of the craving that arises. So a big part of meditation, whether you're sitting or walking meditation, you're learning to look at your mind and see how craving keeps coming up, and developing enough mindfulness to see that and then say, no, let it go. And while you're doing that, you need the patience. Because the craving, the bad guy of the story, it keeps coming back. If you ever read a story or watch a movie, it's like the bad guy been finished off, and you think, that's good, now we can go home. And then suddenly he comes back into the picture again. He didn't die. Craving is like that. It keeps coming up. So we have to be very patient and accept that it will take a bit of practice. But in the end, the Buddha realized that craving is what we say, not self. It's not a person, it's not a being, it's not you or me. Craving is just qualities of mind. You might call them negative qualities, harmful qualities. But that's all they are. It's just thoughts, moods, emotions, negative emotions. And this is one of the amazing insights of the Buddha, that craving is not self. Why is that amazing? Because when you see that or realize that, you realize you can let it go. Because it's not really you. Even if it keeps coming up often, it will trick you and think, oh, it is me. Look, I keep getting worried or angry or keep desiring different things over and over again. So you think it is you. But as you practice more mindfulness, you might have those moments where you realize, oh, craving is not me, and you do let it go. Something that was bothering you before, maybe as you keep practicing, it stops bothering you, it disappears. You can say, oh, craving is not self. It's not really me. And that gives you more faith, more confidence to keep practicing. And of course, it brings you some peace and happiness when your mind lets go of craving. And that may only be for a few moments, because it keeps coming back, annoyingly. But if you do experience some peace when you've let go of craving for a while, then you can see how the whole thing works. You've seen the whole teaching of the Buddha in that moment. You're saying, oh, there is craving, but if I practice mindfulness, bring up the awareness with effort, with mindfulness, with understanding, I can let it go. It just fades away. And if I can do it once, I can do it again. So you start to see the Four Noble Truths at work. So this is what led the Buddha to teach after his enlightenment. He could see that at least some people, when they try, they can understand what he was talking about. And he could see that if they keep practicing this, well, eventually their craving fades away and doesn't return. If they're patient enough, willing to practice, then they can get success. They can find the peace, the happiness that we all wish for. So he began teaching. And he said what he taught is something that humans can practice, can do. It's not too difficult for us, although it takes some time and effort. Even for you, if you're feeling your practice is not yet very advanced, maybe you feel like you're a complete beginner, or even if you've been meditating a while, for a few years or many years, and you might think, oh, my meditation is no good, I'm still always thinking too much, falling asleep, getting irritated, whatever. The fact that you're sitting here now, you can sit still like this, means you have all the right qualities to practice for enlightenment. If you didn't, you wouldn't be here. You wouldn't be able to sit in a room like this. So that's part of meditation as well. So being honest and saying, well, I have some good qualities as well as all these moments of craving, which cause so much mental disturbance, which I know all about, because we know about craving, because we're not peaceful when we're craving. But we also have to recognize we have many good qualities already. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here, we wouldn't be able to listen to Dhamma, wouldn't be able to try meditation. It would be too much for us, too difficult. So, Ajahn Chah used to say, meditation is sometimes a bit like raising a kid. Sometimes you need to be firm and strict with your child, because they're new to the world, they don't know everything, they're young. But also you need to praise them and encourage them. So it's a matter of time and place. So that's the same for you as you meditate. You have to, when you need it, you have to praise yourself. Pat yourself on the back and say, oh, even though my mind is not that peaceful, I'm here, I'm doing this. Even one moment of mindfulness, going to the breath is a good thing. I can do that. So if you can see the good things that you're doing or have done, it gives you some encouragement. But then of course you also need some discipline, and sometimes you have to be firm with yourself. Bring your mind back many times when it wanders off as you're meditating. As we lose our direction, we may fall asleep, or we start worrying, just wandering around in our thoughts. Or even you go outside and start talking, and very quickly all your mindfulness drains away. We have to accept that, and then sometimes we have to be firm with ourselves. Say, oh, come back, do some more meditation, or come back to the breath. Let that one go. Sometimes we're annoyed with something and it's just feeding a lot of negativity. Could be a memory, or it could be just something coming up right here. Sometimes we're bored, so we start looking for something to fantasize about. So everyone has this problem. It gets to 10 o'clock, you're meditating, start thinking about food, the meal. Later in the day you start thinking, what am I going to do when I get home? These are the challenges, and sometimes you have to be firm with yourself. Tell yourself, oh, let it go, doesn't matter. Or just see that the desire is impermanent. It comes up. As you become aware of it, you just watch it. And you'll see, oh, many thoughts and desires, if you watch them, they just arise and they pass away. That's what they do. They're impermanent. When you don't see them, what happens? You get lost in the story and the pictures and the words and the thoughts. We react to things. If it's pleasant, we like it and creates one kind of story. If it's an unpleasant feeling or experience we're having, then it's another kind of story. And both of them take us away from the present moment, from our mindfulness, following craving. So craving is a bit like a bus. If you're in town, you get on a bus or a tram in Melbourne, but you don't know where it's going. Or maybe in a foreign country where the buses and trams, they have the place that they're going to written in a language you don't read, you don't know. So you just get on hoping, hoping it will get you somewhere. And it might take you to the other side of town, dump you at the end of the line and you don't know where you are. It's not where you want it to be. Craving is like that. We just allow ourselves to jump on the bus of craving. It deposits us somewhere far away, lost and far away from mindfulness after a while. We all know that. When you meditate, sometimes it's just one thought, one moment, when your mindfulness is stronger. Sometimes it's half an hour, just sitting there thinking and thinking and thinking. Or falling asleep is another kind of craving. Why do we fall asleep? Partly because we like it. Because when you meditate, you start relaxing physically. Close your eyes, relax. You're not doing anything outside of yourself, you're just sitting there. So that's a pattern that is telling your brain, telling your mind, oh, time for bed, time for sleep. So we start dropping off. It may even be quite pleasant if you're tired, it feels good just to doze, go sleepy. There's another kind of craving, subtle one. So that requires some effort, some mindfulness. So if you're falling asleep, just open your eyes is a good one. If you open your eyes, you get the light from the room. Look at the Buddha, look at the light. Then you wake up a bit. That often helps. Or later on we'll do some walking meditation. You can go outside, the air is cooler outside, and you walk and you wake up. When you become more mindful, you start to come out of your sleepiness. Of course, another way you come out of sleepiness, you just think about something you like, or do something you like. So I've never seen anyone falling asleep in the kitchen at mealtime. Never ever. People don't fall asleep when they're eating food. Maybe if you haven't slept for many days, like monks, we sometimes do that practice. I remember falling asleep during a meal after I hadn't slept for 3 days and 3 nights. So okay, it is possible to fall asleep in front of food. But normally you never fall asleep in front of food because it stimulates you. You forget everything else. Or other things like talking to your friend, listening to music, movies, things that stimulate us, bring us out of sleepiness, of course. But here we're trying to stimulate ourselves with mindfulness. So you have to accept it's a higher quality, bringing the mind up to a higher level, so you can be mindful of the breath. You might think, how can my breathing, following my breath in, breath out, watching the breath, how can that take away sleepiness? The breath is so simple, so subtle. Really, the reason the reason you fall into sleepiness when you're watching your breath is because you don't really know the breath yet. If you really knew the breath, it would brighten your mind, wake you up with mindfulness, knowing the breath in, knowing the breath out. If you're really mindful of each breath, you put that effort in, you try, your sleepiness will fade away because you actually do stimulate yourself, wake yourself up through mindfulness. And many people find that when they're falling asleep, maybe in the beginning of meditation, that's the first problem, just drifting off. But if they keep doing it, putting effort into being mindful of the breath in, breath out, tip of the nose, the abdomen, the chest, doesn't matter which point. When you're really sticking with the breath, you don't fall asleep. It brightens the mind. Maybe even takes you inwards, and you let go of your body and sleepiness, let go of thoughts and the things around you, because you're putting effort into knowing each breath in, each breath out. So don't give up if you're finding you're sleepy. Just keep going, be patient. Try a bit harder. If it's just thinking, well, maybe you pause, you're trying to watch the breath, but you're just thinking. Ask yourself, what am I thinking about? How important is this? If you're planning what you're going to do tomorrow, you can tell yourself, it doesn't matter, let it go. This is not the time to make your plans for the future. I can set them aside. All the expectations, what you want to do, what you want to get, just let it go. Tell yourself to let it go. So you have to give yourself the right instruction. Just remind yourself, oh, let it go, come back to the breath. They're just thoughts anyway, and you can't really know for sure what will happen tomorrow. So just let it go, let those thoughts go. Don't hold on to them. If it's thoughts about the past, same. Remind yourself, just let it go, it's the past. You can't change it. Can't fix it, and this is not the time to even try fixing it. Just tell yourself, oh, that's a memory, so you have enough mindfulness, you know that's a memory. Accept it and let it go. If you remember something that annoys you, you have to accept it. Okay, the memory comes up, gives you some unpleasantness. But it's just a memory, it's just a feeling. Come back to the breath, let it go. If it's something really annoying, makes you angry, cultivate metta, loving kindness, for yourself, or even for someone else. If it's a memory about somebody else you don't like, you're angry with, just wish them well. Remind yourself of their good qualities, maybe. And then come back to the breath. A lot of our meditation is recognizing the different forms of craving coming up, the liking, disliking, wanting, not wanting, that we attach to, recognizing them and then finding skillful way just to let it go. And the best way of always just establish mindfulness. Let's see, this is impermanent, this is not self, let it go. But sometimes you have to work at it a bit, be a bit creative. Just push the door. Sometimes even opening a door is a problem. So I've given you some teaching on meditation. We'll just do a few more minutes quietly, and then we'll do some walking meditation. But just sit for a little bit longer. Try and find that feeling of the in-breath, the out-breath.